right side, to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! 6, going to the hoop, puts it up, puts it in! A fantastic play.
Welcome once again to the Richard Horse & Associates studios. Frank Dodds, Brad Logan with you. This is the Hotty Toddy edition of Magnolia Fields, and all our headlines today are going to be horror movies related. Week 13 felt like Friday, their 13th. Number 5, Indiana loses. Number 7, Alabama loses. Those both help Ole Miss. Number 14, BYU. Number 15, A&M. Number 16, Colorado. Number 19, Army. Everything's going perfectly for the Rebels except for
the one thing.
One thing. Oops.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. It. If you kind of look back at the Florida game, it kind of has a lot of the characteristics of the Kentucky game earlier in the year. You turn the football over. You're inefficient in the red zone. You muff a punt. And you
drop a touchdown pass. You miss that field goal, and then don't go for any after that.
Yeah,
I think that first one hurt.
It did, and I think Lane Kiffin's probably thinking, Cade Davis has already missed one field goal. J.J. Pegues, by the way, coming into the game was 12 for 12 on fourth down conversions. He was 1 for 3, 0 for 2.
2 for 4, I think.
2 for 4. In any event, there were 2 crucial 4th and 1 plays that Ole Miss calls. They don't get it. And they go 0 for 3 in the red zone. That was the tail of the tape. And it was a situation to where Ole Miss had the game at their hands. Now, I think a lot of people are putting undue pressure on Jaxson Dart. Did Jaxson Dart falter under pressure against Florida, LSU, and Kentucky? Maybe. But this does not solely sit at his feet. He was playing without Daquan Wright, his starting tight end. He was playing without Tre Harris.
Who got hurt early.
He did.
Early.
He was playing without Tre Harris, who re-injured his groin after catching a touchdown pass. He was without Caden Prescorn, who for whatever reason has gone completely, silent over the last couple of games.
Missing in action.
Yeah. And Jordan Watkins, his best receiver, tweaked a hamstring from an earlier injury. He had Caden Lee, who was really good, has been really good this year, and is going to be a huge, huge component of this offense next year with Austin Simmons at quarterback. But Juice Wells, where's Juice Wells been this year? He does nothing substantive for Ole Miss. He does nothing but drop passes and has not been what Ole Miss would like them to be. We asked Lane Kiffin to comment on Juice Wells' play this year, and he paused for a minute. He said it's really been up and down, which is a very nice way of saying he has not lived up to the billing. It was a recipe for disaster. Everything that went wrong for Ole Miss kind of went wrong, and I've made mention that Lane mentions analytics a lot, and I think people are kind of tired of hearing that word. It feels like it's more of an excuse than it is an answer to particular issues offensively for Ole Miss. And I do believe that Caden Davis, being as good as he's been, I think he makes a couple of those field goals and that the game changes. Jordan Watkins was had that tweaked hamstring. He misses a touchdown pass. Juice Wells hits one hand at fault. He misses a touchdown pass. It was so many missed opportunities for Ole Miss down the stretch, and they lose the game.
And everybody's pointing to the interceptions that Jaxson Dart threw.
That was late in the game, and that game was over by then.
That, and I'm not sure that the receiver was on the right route.
That Juice Wells did not run the right route. Now, the pass into the end zone was all Jaxson Dart.
Right, I agree with you on that one.
It was desperation mode. He threw it into triple coverage. But the interception before that was the one to Juice Wells. He just didn't run the right route.
And we're going to talk a little bit about it in our second headline, but how healthy is Jaxson Dart? Only focus on him for right now because we have an injury section coming up.
Yeah, he is not 100% healthy. He still has that banged up ankle injury, but he plays through it. And he has been really, really good for Ole Miss this year. Being the quarterback, he's going to be in the spotlight a good bit for the negative. But I make mention that I believe if Ole Miss does not have Jaxson Dart, they don't have as many wins as they have.
Well, and also you talked about desperation mode just a moment ago, throwing into triple coverage. If he's healthy, if that ankle would have allowed him not to throw into triple coverage but take a 10-yard, 15-yard scramble, I don't think he throws that pass.
Well, there were a couple plays last year before he injured his ankle that they run the quarterback draws. And we saw that a couple of times against Florida, but not as many as we've seen. And I think a lot of it's because of his ankle injury. A lot of it has been some phantom offensive game plans by Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss. I can't sit here and say that I agree with a lot of what they did. They almost abandoned the middle of the field. So there's some question marks there. At the end of the day, you just have questions about how this game transpired against Florida. They had the opportunity to really go up heavy on Florida, just like Kentucky, just like LSU, getting down the field and not electing to kick the field goal and put it on your top-ranked defense in the country and allow them to play defense. You go for it, don't get it, and you get no points. Always take the points on the road, but Lane doesn't subscribe to that. He didn't subscribe to that then. What happened to the game plan against Georgia? Why do they differ so much to the game plan against Florida on the road? It's almost like it's two different coaching staff. So many fingers to be pointed, and I do think there are a lot of people to point fingers at. But honestly, Frank, if you look at this Ole Miss offense, the lack of a running game has been paramount for this team in its 3 losses. They have no running game. They were running a fourth-team walk-on wide receiver at tailback. Where is Quinshawn? We know where Quinshawn Judkins is. He's at Ohio State.
Where is Bentley? That was my follow-up question.
Where is Ulysses Bentley? I don't know. We've asked Lane till we're all blue in the face. We get the same answer. He's done everything right. You make hard decisions as head coach at Ole Miss, but we still don't have a definitive answer.
Wide receiver at running back is not the answer.
I like Dominique Thomas late in the game, Frank.
Yes.
He runs hard. He blocks well.
He can pick up a
this Ole Miss,
block.
This Ole Miss coaching staff went to the portal. They got Henry Parrish Jr. back. They got Ulysses Bentley locked down. They got Rashad Amos. They felt really good going into the season. Parrish gets injured. Bentley's nowhere to be found. It's not an injury situation because he is the primary return on kickoff return. So it's not an injury. It's obviously an on-the-field issue, and it's not off the field. We ask. We were told it is not an off-the-field issue.
It worries me as they go forward, whatever that means. And we'll talk about the CFP in a minute. And there's those out there that say there's still a path. We'll know tonight. This is a Tuesday edition. We usually are in the studio, the Richard Schwartz and Associates studio, on a Wednesday. But today is a Tuesday because of Thanksgiving. Oh, by the way, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And we'll know tonight, is there still a path forward? But I think they've got to answer the question at running back, and you also had the center go down. Let's go to the second headline, which is Scream, and talk about the specific injuries. Who's going to be playing this week against Mississippi State in the battle for the Golden Egg?
Well, let's talk about Reese McIntyre for a moment on the offensive line. He did go out, and we saw Gerquan Scott, the transfer out of Southern Miss, come in. There were a couple of errant snaps, but Jaxson Dart has done a good job this year of securing those. We saw a backup center come in against Georgia when Austin Simmons was in that huge drive early in the game, and he jumps up and makes a nice play, and then, of course, throws it for the 4th down completion. But Tre Harris being out, he re-injures his groin. We do not expect him to return for the remainder of the year. Hopefully he heals up and he is able to go to the National Football League. He's a terrific receiver. If he stays healthy, he's got the Biletnikoff Award wrapped up. But he doesn't. And so Ole Miss is going to be without him.
Mentioned McIntyre.
Yeah.
Is he able to play this Friday?
We don't know. If he can't go, we expect to see Scott there. Remember they rolled Jeremy James in. They rolled him to right guard, and there's been some shuffling there. But McIntyre's been the number one center. What I don't understand is where's Caleb Warren been? He started last year at center. Where's Jeremy James been? He's played in 80-plus consecutive games up and coming until this year. We know he's not injured. There's just been a lot of questions. Jaden Williams has not gotten significant snaps in lieu of Diego Pounds. But I don't think the offensive line's been an issue in regards to pass blocking. Run blocking, sure. But a lot of that has been because Ole Miss has not had an effective running back. I've said all along, if Jaxson Dart were remotely healthy, I think he is the preeminent runner for Ole Miss. And I think in the Egg Bowl coming up on Friday, as we've moved that thing from Thursday to Friday at 2:30 on ABC, I think if Ole Miss runs the ball effectively, they're going to have to do so by 2 people. I think Dominique Thomas is obviously the running back that jumps out to me that would be the best running back. For the life of me, Frank, I do not understand why Micah Davis was the running back against Florida. the biggest game in Ole Miss history, and the staff elects to put in a walk-on wide receiver at running back. The good Lord allows me to live to be 80 years old. I'll never understand it. We asked in the press conference. We never received an answer. So I do think Dominique Thomas is the answer. I think throwing the ball down the field, Caden Lee should have a really big day against Mississippi State. I expect Jaxson Dart to play really hard, but I think that is the answer for Ole Miss. And real quick, back to the injury, Matt Jones was able to go. He was not on the inavailability report. So really the only injuries that we know of are Reese McIntyre. We also mentioned the defensive back for Ole Miss. I will add that Yam Banks did have a successful surgery the other day, so he went out with a lower leg injury, so he is out for the year.
Yes.
Tre Harris, and then we'll see if Reese McIntyre can go. Other than that, of course, Henry Parrish Jr., he's out. Do not expect any additional issues. We'll see if Daquan Wright can go. He went out with an injury. So other than that, Ole Miss appears to be pretty healthy heading into the Egg Bowl.
It's hard to believe at this time of the year, and as they've played so many games, but you thought that might get remedied by the bye week before Florida.
It really did, and these injuries we're talking about occurred during the game. So Ole Miss was as healthy as they've been all year long heading into the Florida game. And it's really frustrating if you're an Ole Miss fan because you have the tiger by the tail. I mean, you pointed out everything had to happen perfectly for Ole Miss. Not really perfectly, but they had to kind of fall into place. And they had a lot of things go their way, except they forgot one huge component: win their game.
Take care of business.
Yeah, they didn't do that.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the Hotty Toddy edition of the Magnolia Fields podcast right after this.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, you know who to call. Call me. Remember, one call, that's all.
Welcome to the Richard Schwartz and Associates Magnolia Field Studios. One call, that's all.
Welcome back into the Richard Schwartz and Associates studio. Brad Logan, Frank Dodds with you. Let's go to headline number 3, the Gremlins. The Egg Bowl. First-time head coaches have won the last 3 times.
Really?
Really. First time against an experienced head coach. Now, there's a caveat there. You could count Joe Moorhead, but Matt Luke was in his first year also, technically because he had been the interim the year before. In fact, Matt Luke won, but he was, again, the interim. You have to go back to 2012. Hugh Freeze won. In 2009, Dan Mullen won in his first year. And in 2008, Houston Nutt won 45-0. Sylvester Croom turned in his resignation in less than 24 hours. Egg Bowl, Gremlins, there that Mississippi State can really be the spoiler and could really come in and cause a complete collapse to the end of the season for the Ole Miss Rebels. You know they would love to do that. And you talked about the injuries, but is everybody what's the availability report going to look like this week?
Yeah, I think from an injury standpoint, Ole Miss should be in great shape. I think the mindset is a question mark. We'll see what that report looks like tonight, the all-important college football playoff rankings. If Ole Miss has absolutely no chance at all of making the college football playoff, I think there is a cause for concern. If the I'm trying to phrase this in a religious way and not curse, but the give a darn button has not been pushed. If Ole Miss has that outside shot, I think that gives them an extra emphasis into the game against Mississippi State. I will add a couple of things. You made mention of the coaching statistics about who wins who and that sort of thing. I think if you look at the Ole Miss defense versus the Mississippi State defense, it's a tale of two teams. The Mississippi State defense is one that is 132nd out of 133 in pass efficiency and sacks, 131st in tackles for loss out of 133 teams, and then 127th in total defense out of 133 teams. That's mind-bogglingly bad. I mean, that's like categorically awful. And you have to wonder how long Jeff Lebby will allow that to happen, with Cameron Hutzler as defensive coordinator. So, I know numbers aren't the most important thing, but Jaxson Dart is in the top 10 in every statistical category. The Ole Miss defense is in the top 10 in every major statistical category. Now, I know Ole Miss has 3 losses. We've already been through all that. In those 3 losses, I think they've total loss points of 11 to 15 points. I mean, it's just really insane how close those losses have been. But for Ole Miss to kind of, if you look at Mississippi State and really dive down in those numbers, they're really bad. And I think that gives Ole Miss a great opportunity to win. I understand, Frank, a lot of people say throw the records out, and I think there's a lot of validity to that. But at some point you have to look at the numbers, and they're not good when you look at Mississippi State.
Oh, let's talk about the CFP. What if Ole Miss is sitting there around 15 and they've got a chance to move up? Because I think what happened last weekend with all those losses by Ole Miss, Alabama, A&M, BYU, Colorado, I think that opened the door for a second ACC team to get in. You've got Miami. It's pretty good. SMU's got one loss.
Right.
And now all of a sudden Clemson is lurking.
You know, I like what Lane said in the Monday press availability. He said, you know, us being Ole Miss, playing on Friday gives us a chance to take care of our business and then scoreboard watch, so to speak. And when we visited with Lane after the game, he was like, you know, our college football playoff hopes are gone. We've got to just put things together. And then a well-known beat writer asked Lane, how do you keep the team together? And he says it's going to be challenging.
But by Monday, that message changed slightly because of all these other losses.
Right. Everything had kind of changed. And then Lane's like, now we see there's a glimmer of hope. And I think that's a little more renewed emphasis for Ole Miss. And I think it's good for Ole Miss fans because now Ole Miss will absolutely understand this is an important game against Mississippi State and not mail it in. And the Vegas line has intimated that they agree. It started at 24.5. Last I checked, it was 26.5. So they understand as well. A lot of money coming in on Ole Miss to cover that spread, which means, you know, they think Ole Miss is going to win handily. I think as Ole Miss has a chance after the poll tonight, I think we'll see a really, really big Ole Miss win.
My fear, and I'm going to say this publicly, is that my fear is the CFP committee is only looking at losses, and they will jump every one or two loss team ahead of every 3-loss team, regardless of strength of record. I don't think they're looking at it. I don't think they care. And then if they run out of 1 and 2 loss teams, or no loss, undefeated, if they run out of them, I think they're looking for name brand. I think a 3-loss Alabama puts more eyes on the college football playoffs than another team. I just think at that point it becomes a name brand. Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to put the eyeballs onto the CFP?
And I will push back a little bit and say I think the committee, in this case, would kind of lean towards Ole Miss over a lot of other teams because of the eyeball factor. Ole Miss is a team very similar to the Dallas Cowboys, and what I mean by that is people hate watch Ole Miss as much as they watch Ole Miss to love them. And I think
same with Alabama, though.
They do, but what Ole Miss has this year that they haven't had in years past for a college football playoff is a Lane Kiffin, is a known commodity, is someone that brings eyeballs to the sport. And so I think the college football playoff would love to get Lane Kiffin, not necessarily Ole Miss, but Lane Kiffin into the college football playoff. So once again, I encourage everybody, watch that poll, see where Ole Miss lands. And if there's a chance, I like Ole Miss's chances against Mississippi State to win really big.
And we can always hope for an Auburn win in the Iron Bowl.
And then which would eliminate Alabama. You're looking for that. You're looking for what happens with Clemson, South Carolina. You're looking at
if South Carolina wins Clemson, but they become the darling then? They
could. That's why I think a lot of Ole Miss fans may want to kind of root for Clemson because if you root for South Carolina, they're definitely going to be red hot in the 3-loss team as they could catapult Ole Miss. So you may be kind of pulling for Clemson, but I think for Ole Miss, a perfect scenario would be for Texas A&M to lose, Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee, and Auburn to beat Alabama. And if you boat race Mississippi State, I think Ole Miss has got its best shot it could ask for.
Those are all reasonable. Those could happen.
Could, but I don't know that they will.
What happens if Texas and Alabama are your SEC championship matchup, and Alabama loses that game, hypothetically? Now they're a 4-loss team. No way they can get in with 4, can they?
I wouldn't think so, but I really believe that it's going to be Texas and Georgia, and I think both those teams are going to go. It's going to be Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, South Carolina. They're all going to be fighting for that other place.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's go, and we're going to swap Well, before we swap, let's go ahead and take another break. We'll be right back on Magnolia Fields, the Hottie Toddy edition.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, you know who to call. Call me. Remember, one call, that's all.
Welcome back to the Magnolia Field Studios, brought to you by Richard Schwartz and Associates. One call, that's all.
Once again, welcome back in to the Richard Schwartz and Associates studio, Magnolia Fields podcast, the Hottie Toddy edition. He's Brad Logan. I'm Frank Dodds. And our next headline is Thriller. We're going to swap over to the basketball season. Boy, it's exciting. What a non-conference schedule they have. Last night, Ole Miss women dominated Boston College 92-55. They play UConn later. And the Ole Miss men are about to go on the road and play. They're going to play BYU to start things, who was a NCAA tournament team last year, and they will take the winner of NC State, a Final Four team from last year, versus Purdue. So NC State and Purdue on the other side of the bracket. Purdue was the runner-up, national runner-up last year, lost to UConn. And so both the men and the women with some great non-conference scheduling going on right now.
Yeah, and speaking of UConn, Memphis, a huge win over UConn the other night, which makes that Ole Miss-Memphis game even bigger if Ole Miss can be undefeated headed into face the Tigers in FedEx Forum. But the Ratty Children's Invitational, biggest game so far, easily, against a really good BYU team. And that's out in San Diego, California. You made mention of who they would play if they win. This is a great opportunity. The only downside for this is you look at teams like Arkansas, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Mississippi State. So many of these games are on the road, and you really would like to have some of this have a form of a home environment.
Are they on the road or are they a neutral side?
They're neutral, but you would like to be able to play some of these in front of the home fans. So hopefully all those teams can kind of work on their non-conference schedule. But the SEC schedule this year is just an absolute battering ram, as so many teams are good. But what I like about this Ole Miss team is they're getting some play down low. Malik Dia is playing much better than people anticipated him playing. They've been asking him to kind of step up, and he's kind of heeded the call. Matthew Morrell did not play the other night, but they expect him back. And Juju Murray, once again, having a big year. And so Ole Miss fans have really been excited about what Chris Beard can do. He's a guy that can get your team to the Final Four. He's proven he can do that. Is this a year? I think Ole Miss is talented enough to make a run in the NCAA tournament. But I'll be able to answer a lot of those questions after the next couple of weeks.
Oh, no doubt, with their non-conference, and that's the way you get better, though.
Yeah, it is.
You may have to take your lumps along the way, because the SEC is going to be loaded throughout on the men's side.
Yeah, it is, and we'll get to the women in just a moment. They're red hot too. But normally Ole Miss, for the lack of a better word, they load up their non-conference schedule with some fairly easy games. And we've seen Ole Miss go 500 or even below in the SEC, but be undefeated in the non-conference, but yet they're left out of the tournament because their strength of schedule is so poor. This year, that won't be the case. Chris Beard has done a great job of scheduling a bunch of great non-conference teams, some neutral site games, some big-time tournaments. So this is a team that will be absolutely ready for conference play when it gets here.
We mentioned the women's big win last night over Boston College, 92-55. They're down in the Bahamas, and they get UConn next.
Who better to play? I mean, they've already played USC.
Close loss in France.
Close loss in France, and that's a really good Southern Cal team. And why not play Gino in one of the best college basketball programs in the country? So you can't say that Coach Joe's not dodging anybody, because they'll get Tennessee and South Carolina. Mississippi State's playing really well right now. They'll play all of those teams in conference play. So, but yeah, she's getting this team ready. She loves her team. KKD's, we mentioned her before in the program, is playing really well. Coming off that knee injury. So the Ole Miss women's team is one that's going to be really fun to watch. I've enjoyed watching them so far, and excited to get to watch them inside the SBJ Pavilion soon.
So let's turn the page. Our last headline is Speak No Evil. We've talked about the Ole Miss. We're back to football, and we've talked about paths. And the one thing they cannot do is overlook Mississippi State. They cannot take that game lightly. They cannot miss opportunities. They cannot get down on themselves. Ole Miss Rebel fans need to be there. It's a 2:30 game. It's going to be a little chilly, but the rain should have moved out. It should be a fabulous day.
Yeah, it's going to be sunny in Oxford on Friday afternoon, but yeah, it's going to be cool. 47's the high. Everyone that I've talked to surrounding the Ole Miss athletic department thinks it's going to be close to a sellout. I think Mississippi State returned a lot of tickets, but they were able to sell those because the entire SEC season has been sold out. And so this is a game to where, you have to wonder where the mental focus will be. I know from the fan standpoint, there's no doubt Ole Miss fans want to win this game for a number of reasons, state pride and many other reasons. But Ole Miss had to, Tom Luke talks to the team every year. Of course, Tom Luke played at Ole Miss, was a really good quarterback for the Rebels, now serves as assistant on the staff. Ole Miss has over 45 players that are not from Mississippi. So
they don't have a feel for the rivalry.
No, they need to understand the significance. And we were told yesterday by defensive back Tre Washington, they understand the significance of this game. So I expect Ole Miss to be ready.
And then, to speak no evils, the headline in Franco's Fab 15, we've talked about them. Once again, it's worth repeating, though. You really would like to see Auburn beat Alabama.
Right.
I think it bodes well for Ole Miss if Texas beats Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt and Tennessee, is that a tricky game?
It can be.
Vanderbilt?
It can be. I mean, Clark Lee's going to put everything he can into that game. And we've seen, look, I think Vanderbilt has been a great story. They had big wins over Alabama, Virginia Tech. But Vanderbilt has, quite frankly, ran out of gas. LSU just kind of got to them last week. They did not play well against a really hot South Carolina team. But I think Diego Pavia's got one more left in him. And I think they're going to take Tennessee to the brink. I really do. I don't know that they're going to win the game, but I think they're going to make it very interesting in Nashville.
Tennessee's
it's going to be brutally
teams.
cold, like low 40s at kickoff for that game.
And Tennessee's one of those teams that's been a little up and down too. I mean, they don't have a clean slate.
Tua Tagovailoa has been, no, not Tua. I'm sorry, that's Alabama. You'll have to excuse me.
Several years ago.
Imaliava, did I say that right? Anyway, they had a tough loss on the road against
Nico. You can just call him Nico.
Imaliava. They had a tough loss on the road at Arkansas, but they looked pretty good last week. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for Tennessee, and Ole Miss fans are really going to be rooting hard for Clark Lee and Vanderbilt because I think that's just another thing that has to happen for Ole Miss to get into the college football playoff.
Well, let's talk about the AP Top 25. They have dropped, and we've got if you look at fascinating to me, the ESPN FPI that dropped this week. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I didn't
quite.
It's
I had Ole Miss
madness.
at 6.
It's madness. That's all about who would beat who on a neutral field.
Yes.
So,
yeah, and it's at 5 of the SEC teams in the top 8.
Yeah.
Including Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Anyway, the AP poll, another beauty poll, Eye of the Beholder, Oregon number 1, Ohio State, Texas at 3, and then you've got Georgia moves all the way up to 6. They had been at 8 in the AP poll. Tennessee jumps 3 spots to number 7. So you really need another loss there for Tennessee if you're wanting Ole Miss to get in there. Miami of Florida and SMU lurking. Mm-hmm. Indiana fell 5 spots after their loss, but it wasn't as bad as I think Ole Miss fans were hoping for, or SEC fans, as a matter of fact.
I think Indiana's in.
Boise State moves up. Clemson up 5, and now 9-2, and they're lurking. Alabama's at 13 in the AP poll. They're going to be much higher in the CFP.
No doubt.
And then Arizona State moves up 7. Alabama fell 6. Arizona State up 7. Ole Miss fell 6. They are currently at 15 in the AP poll. Who's lurking? South Carolina's right behind them at 16.
Here's a game to watch. Georgia and Georgia Tech. Do not count out Coach Brent Key and Georgia Tech to give Georgia a heck of a run this year. So something to monitor.
That would be very interesting. Wouldn't hurt my feelings a bit. Texas A&M is the only other SEC team in the top 20 of the AP poll. They fell 5 down to number 20. So it's a lot of football to play for. We talk about the games you need to watch as it impacts the Ole Miss team. And we've got some good ones this weekend. You can get, like you said, you can get that game in on Friday in the battle for the Golden Egg, and then you can scoreboard watch the rest of the weekend.
Bottom line, Ole Miss needs to win. They need to win big and beat Mississippi State badly.
Thank you for tuning in to the Max House Sports Network, Magnolia Fields podcast, Hotty Toddy edition. Have a happy Thanksgiving.